everyone, this is Lisa Haven, and I've got a unique report to share with you today, specifically in regards to the X-Files TV series that is now being aired again and has just aired yesterday and over the weekend. Definitely an interesting show that I'm keeping my eye on. Now, with that in mind, the CIA, the Central Intelligence Agency of the United States, has taken upon themselves to delve through their numerous accounts and files of paranormal activity and UFOlogy to highlight 10 reports that they want to re-highlight or re-bring up in response to the show. And they actually delve through and say there are 5 documents that Mulder would like to get his hands on and 5 documents that Agent Sully would like to get her hands on. And so I want to show you those 10 files. But before I get into that, let me just make a few points here. For those of you who were able to watch the hit series X-Files back, when it was aired a while back, it's got lots of great and obviously controversial information. Now, the show, for those of you who are not aware, it was taken off air and canceled after September 11th. And I believe that's because they had some predictions that actually came true. One of those predictions being the 9/11 attacks. Now, I'm just going to play the audio clip. This is of the, and let me make sure I'm quoting it right, but the Lone Gunman, which is a trio of characters, and there was 3 of them, and they appeared on a recurring role on the American TV series The X-Files, and who starred in the short-lived spinoff The Lone Gunman. So this is part of The X-Files, and it is this video, which I'm going to play, in which they predicted September 11th attacks. Let me play that clip for you.
Scenario 12D. We know it's a war game scenario, that it has to do with airline counterterrorism. Why is it important enough to kill for?
Because it's no longer a game.
But if some terrorist group wants to act out this scenario, why target you for assassination?
Depends on who your terrorists are.
The men who conceived of it in the first place. You're saying our government plans to commit a terrorist act against a domestic airline?
There you go. Indicting the entire government as usual. It's a faction. A small faction.
For what possible gain?
The Cold War's over, John. But with no clear enemy to stockpile against, the arms market's flat. But bring down a fully loaded 727 into the middle of New York City, and you'll find a dozen tin pot dictators all over the world just clamoring to take responsibility and begging to be smart bombed.
I can't believe it. This is about increasing arms sales.
Mm-hmm.
When?
Tonight?
How are you going to stop them?
All right. So there you have it. And I'm going to leave the video clip in its full so you can see that below. I'll leave a link to that under my YouTube channel under for more information. So make sure you watch the clip in its entirety. But that's just a piece, and that was aired on 21st Century Fox, just a little clip there of that movie. But you can see very clearly, that they talked about, a terrorist overtaking a plane, hitting New York City. That's a very thin line. Did they know something we didn't? And then all of a sudden the show canceled after 9/11. And here we are back, in 2016, and the show is re-airing. And this time the show is actually taking on more of the characteristics of Alex Jones, who I watch and really enjoy his stuff. But they've kind of got that. Now, I don't know where the show is eventually going to go, but it's definitely intriguing to me to see what happens and where they take it, especially with that clip in consideration. So something to think about there. And now the CIA has released documents. Let's check those out. A quick break here to tell you about a brand new product that I'm using in conjunction with the tea, and that is Colostrum LD. This is very good for cognitive, your thinking, clearing your brain. It's good for immunity. It's good for your skin. It supercharges your dieting and has lots of great benefits. It also cleans out your GI tract and helps with that as well. So check it out on getthetea.com. All right, so here we are on CIA.gov, and the headline reads, "Take a peek into our, quote, X-Files." Obviously, this is very recent. You can see the date here, but it says this: "The CIA declassifies hundreds of documents in 1978 detailing the agency's investigations into UFOs. The documents date primarily from the late 1940s and 50s. To help navigate the vast amount of data contained in our Freedom of Information Act UFO collection," and I'll take you to that link, but they've decided to highlight a few documents both skeptics and believers will find interesting. Below you will see 5 documents we think X-File characters Agent Fox Mulder would love to use to try and persuade others of the existence of extraterrestrial activity. We also pulled 5 documents that his partner, Agent Dana Scully, could use to prove her scientific explanation for UFOs. So you can see some of the images here. Now, before I go into these, most of these are just a page or two long, very easily readable. I want to show you. Take a note of when these pictures were taken. This is Sheffield, England, March 4th, 1962. The one below here, let me move the screen. And there's the other one, Minneapolis, Minnesota, October 20th, 1960. All right, so here we are back on the CIA page, but before I delve into these, and I'm going to really brief them, I want to remind you that in 1903 was when the Wright brothers came up with the first aircraft, the first powered aircraft. Now, that's not much time if we take 1903 to Roswell, when the first Roswell incident happened in 1947. That is that date. That's 44 years after the Wright brothers invented the aircraft. Now, that's not enough time to get as technically savvy as the stuff that we are seeing on the technology on these UFO aircrafts. That is why the UFO phenomenon is out there. That is why I believe they are actually interdimensional Nephilim and fallen angels from the Bible. That is a belief, obviously, but this is why there's such controversy. There's no way those things could have already been created and in the air unless, you know, some government agency did something with them, but definitely something to think about. But that's a topic for another day. Let's delve into some of these reports. Here's the first one. This is a flying saucer in Germany. I'm going to leave these, but this is basically a story of a 48-year-old German man who has 6 children, and he has an encounter with a huge flying pan looking thing. He goes on to say that when he saw this pan-looking saucer, that he noticed 2 men in metallic suits as he, exited his motorcycle, which he was riding on. Here's that portion. 2 men who were now about 40 meters from me. They seemed to be dressed in a shiny metallic clothing. They were stooped over and were looking at something lying on the ground. He goes on, and I'm just kind of briefing this, but he goes on to say he approached until he was about 10 meters away from them, and he looked over and saw a small fence, and then he noticed a large object that looked like a frying pan. Now, this is just a repeat here of that story. At that moment, his daughter, who had remained a distance behind him, called him. The 2 men must have heard his daughter's voice because they immediately jumped on the conical tower and disappeared inside of it. Goes on to say that one of the men had a lamp on this part of the body, and it lit up in intervals. I found that kind of interesting. But he goes on to report that there was a glittering or a brightness, and also a ring of flames, as they describe it, and also a sound of whistling or a slight humming sound that kind of sounded like when bombs fall. But this is the story in a nutshell. Obviously, I'm really pushing it down here, but they also talk about how neighbors in the area also heard something that sounded similar to a comet. And now that's the whole report. It basically repeats itself, but I find it interesting that they're releasing these. Here is another one on the site here. Now, all this is minutes, a review of a branch chief's meeting held August 1952. Now, these are just a meeting that they want to talk and get together to discuss flying saucers. That's that one. Here is another report. This one happened in Spain, and this is another encounter of UFOs. In this encounter, it's about a smoke trailing object in the sky, about 2,000 meters above the sky, and the object was kind of rocket shaped, and the smoke came out of 2 points close together, merging into a single streak. You know, back then that sounds like a jet, but they also talk about here, in this one here, is a flaming disc shape and a saucer over Casablanca. So these are just a few different encounters and witnesses as well. That's the 1, 2, 3. Third one. Here is the fourth one. This is just to the Deputy Assistant Director. And it just talks about all the reports, or a lot of reports. They say of the 1,000 to 2,000 reports that came back, most of them were clearly seen as phonies. However, 100 of them, about 100 or less than 100 of them, could be deemed as unexplainable phenomenon, and that they should, you know, further delve into the information. That's kind of all that report is. And this final one here, again, is flying saucer over Congo. Now, this one just talks about 2 discs, or 2 fiery discs, that were sighted chasing another plane, I guess a jet, and it just talks about some of the things that they saw. And then they actually have imagery here below, or sketched what some of those saucers looked like. Now, let's go over to the 5 other reports. Now, these are the 5 that Sully would like to get her hands on. Going first to the Scientific Advisory Panel. Now, this is just a panel of people that gather together and try to explain UFO phenomenon and what it could be, or what these specific reports are. So I'll leave that for you to read. That's it in a nutshell. Office Memorandum on Flying Saucers. This was in 1949. Now, this memorandum basically says that if a UFO were to fly over America, it likely could not, or it would not be, it would be extremely unlikely because of these scientific parameters. So it kind of says, okay, this is why the UFO phenomenon can't be true. All right, going to the next one here, Memorandum to CIA Director on Flying Saucers. This one is to the director of the CIA, and it basically talks about whether or not they should study UFOs and whether they pose a problem. And they say, well, there's 2 problems. It can cause a psychological problem, as well as put the U.S. vulnerable to airstrikes if they are real. And they wanted to put this report and find out whether there is a real security risk with unidentified flying objects or not, which makes one wonder, well, if the CIA is even thinking about that issue, there must be grounds for some concern somewhere. So there's that one in a quick nutshell. Meeting of the OSI Advisory Group on UFOs. This was January 1953. Now, if they went and did this stuff back then, you can rest assured they're doing it now. And again, this is just another review of the UFO phenomenon. I don't want to dive in too much detail. And the last one, Memorandum on Record. This was 1952. And this report basically details a meeting in which they believe they should study what's going on. And that's kind of it in a nutshell. Now, if you want the whole enchilada on it, you can go to Freedom of Information Act, or FOIA.CIA.gov, and you can get all kinds of information on all of, you know, the stuff that's been released on UFOs. And there are hundreds of these bad boys. So if you're going to dive through it, keep in mind you've got lots of information there as well to delve through. But I find it interesting and fascinating that in response to X-Files, here the CIA is highlighting a few. So there you have it. Why is it that X-Files was canceled back before 9/11, and all of a sudden it's back aired again? And they are talking about some major government conspiracy type of stuff that you hear on channels like mine, Alex Jones, and many others out there. Why is it that the CIA is now making their 2 cents heard and putting UFO files that are specifically in tune to Mueller and Scully on the on the X-Files, why are they parading that on their website? We know that the CIA and the FBI are corrupt organizations. Why even go there? Good question. And there's a lot of responses to that. Could it be something with the Nephilim and fallen angels of the Bible, which I believe are real and interdimensional? Does it have something to do with Project Bluebeam? Is the government really just pulling the wool over our eyes? Is there another tale to be told, as they told with 9/11 on the X-Files series? Well, I guess time will tell ultimately on that, but nonetheless, I'm intrigued and wanted to bring you the latest and just give you a red alert and a heads up with the CIA, because it really is throwing up flags for me that the CIA has this on their website talking about the X-Files, considering some of the past history of the X-Files. Anyhow, wanted to bring you the latest. Thanks again for tuning in, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button and check out my channel. Thanks again. This is Lisa Haven signing off.